Time is 8:46, and you're still listening to News and Views. As we have since the show has begun, we're speaking to various Palestine solidarity organizations. We've spoken to Ali Kumape from Africa for Palestine, and we've also spoken to Mahfouz Rafi, from the Socialist Youth Movement, and right now we'll be joined by Naazim Adam of Palestine Solidarity Alliance, and basically chatting to them about that announcement from President Cyril Ramaphosa. It's something that we've always known, after the ANC lost that outright majority in the elections, that there might be something reflective of a government of national unity or coalition of some sort. But he came out yesterday and saying they're leaning more on the side of a government of national unity, which essentially means most of the political parties will be, part of this government, will be making their way to the National Assembly, and will be, integral in the decision making of the country, with the ANC no longer enjoying outright majority. And the concern with that is you have political parties, that don't share the same ideology with the ANC, particularly when it comes to the issue of Palestine. As I mentioned before, the ANC, the government of the day when we presented that case to the ICJ, government of the day when South Africa really, became heads and shoulders above all the countries across the world when it comes to speaking on Palestine and against the Israeli occupied forces. And they've received criticism from political parties that are now going to be part of that government of national unity. And we'll be getting reactions right now from Naazim Adam from the Palestine Solidarity Alliance. Naazim, jazakallah so much for joining us, and welcome to Salam Media. Really, really interesting times ahead for South Africa, not only affecting South Africans, but potentially also affecting the people of Palestine.
Assalamu alaikum. Good to be with Salam Media again. Yeah, I think it's interesting times, but it's also concerning times, because we're not too sure how this will unpack and how it will impact on our country. I think that we are in governance pretty strong as a country, and in terms of operations, things should continue in the months that follow. It's about the horse trading that is the concern, in terms of who's going to be getting what positions if they agree to a government of national unity, and what are the compromises that the ANC would need to make. Our concern is that the ANC, being in the position that they are, will need to make some concessions to bring people on board. Yet there are many organizations that probably have, many of the parties, maybe smaller parties, who could have ideological and political and visionary status as the ANC. But there are many that don't. And making alliance with those political parties who are, say, almost stable, directly opposed to the value system that comes from our historical struggle against apartheid, that's going to be a concern, because you cannot compromise on the victories of our revolution and the change that we have overcome. In many ways, Palestine represents the stand that the ANC has taken on Palestine represents those values of non-racialism, of putting humanity first, of accountability and justice. These are the values that aspirations that underpinned our own revolution, and which were carried forward through the government when they went to the ICJ with their support for the Palestinian people. And so it's not just about the support for Palestine that we're worried about, but it's actually the support for the values of our revolution and the change that we wanted to see. We cannot compromise on that. That is our concern. Whatever happens, I think we as the Solidarity are pretty much resolved that our work continues. We will continue to stand with the Palestinian people, supporting their struggle for humanity, for justice, for liberation, for freedom. We will continue to advocate for it. And, with the gruesome murder of Halima Hussein and the attack on her family, it just brings home the fact that we are actually dealing with Zionism and its hateful nature right here in South Africa, and that we have a struggle of our own against those kind of colonial superiority values that we still have not overcome in South Africa, and which we need to continue with our struggle and our work in South Africa against Zionism, but against racism in generally, and bigotry, and work towards a more unified nation that is able to respect people of all faiths, of all cultures, of all religions, of all ethnicities. So these things have come to the fore in the last few months, and we realize that we just need to continue doing our work.
Mm, mm. And just going back to that government of national unity, how concerning is it, to have a party like the Patriotic Alliance and the Democratic Alliance? Well, they've always been in parliament, but right now going to be making up, that government of national unity, which means, they're going to be more integral when it comes to decision making and, drafting of policy and passing of policy in parliament, because the ANC doesn't enjoy that outright majority anymore. And the Patriotic Alliance also unequivocal on their support for Israel. How concerning is it? And is there any way, as solidarity organizations, to try and mitigate that? Is there a role that you can play, to try and influence some of the decisions that these parties are going to be making when it comes to Palestine in parliament?
Look, either way, even with a strong ANC, we needed to still advocate and lobby for our positioning, push the government towards sanctions, which is what we are pushing towards and have always been pushing towards, is that South Africa totally isolates the apartheid state of Israel. Certainly, the compromises are now a concern, and what the ANC agrees to in its compromise deal. I think a deal with the DA and the Patriotic Alliance, given their position, is not good for the solidarity movement. But remember that there are many in the solidarity movement that supported the progressive left, if you like, and even the ANC. And we need to continue with our work. I think it will be much more difficult now because the ANC will need to consider its alliance partners. I think they are very, very worried because the left, the trade unions, the tripartite alliance is also at risk because of this. I think that the DA and the Patriotic Alliance will also need to compromise, and we need to use our efforts and our strength to push towards that. Because at the end of the day, I cannot see that South Africa does not stand against apartheid. It would be totally ironical if a post-apartheid South Africa that has overcome a history of apartheid, is still dealing with the legacy of that apartheid, can stand in and affirm an Israeli apartheid state. I think there's too much that has been exposed about Israel in the last few months around its very, very genocidal and ethno-fascist nature. And for any South African to be advocating support for Israel is just it's callous. It's indifferent to human suffering, especially Palestinian suffering. And I think that is where we need to begin to challenge the value system of parties like the Democratic Alliance and the Patriotic Alliance for their stand in support of Israel.
Mm. And I just want to pick your brain on this. Just how much, of the Democratic Alliance and parties like Patriotic Alliance have now standing in a position that they have. How much of it is the doing of people that consider themselves pro-Palestine activists? I'm asking you this because when the numbers came in, and I also interviewed Kenny Kunene, who boastfully said the people that have been singing and screaming "Free Palestine" with the ANC are the one that have voted for us and are the ones that have voted for the Democratic Alliance. Looking at all the wards and all the VDs when the numbers are coming out, all the areas, and this is him. I quote: all of the areas with Palestine flags painted on their walls are the ones that voted for the Democratic Alliance and for the Patriotic Alliance. What do you make of this?
Look, I don't know how true that is. I think everyone is claiming that the pro-Palestinian voted for them. I don't think anyone that is worth their salt that has taken a stand against apartheid Israel would vote for such parties. Yes, there are some people within the perhaps Muslim community or in those communities where the solidarity is strong. There may be others in those communities that took a adverse position. But for Palestinian solidarity activists and people that have been very active in the movement, I don't think that any one of them would have voted for the DA or Action SA or whatever or the PA. Yes, there would be probably people from the religious sectors who would have done so. We found that the PA is a very unscrupulous organization because some of their members were saying that they're part of the PSA and campaigning. And we had to call them out to say that there is no alliance with the PA and the PSA, and they are lying because that's what they do. So there was very unscrupulous campaigning. What I do think that we have seen is that people voted in terms of their own self-interest and that in terms of what they felt was going to be best for them and their community or their families. And so you'll see in certain wards that people actually didn't vote for someone, they actually voted against the ANC, which was much of the campaigning. And the ANC is also its own worst enemy because it has not delivered what it needed to deliver for in the communities that have not voted for them. Some of those wards, I think, were traditionally not ANC wards, so it was going to be difficult to win votes in those sectors anyway. The most important thing I think that we need to evaluate is the way money flowed into the election and the political parties and the campaigning, because the access to resources, I think, played a far more influential part in how the campaigns unfolded and how the marketing was done and how people voted. So if you look at just social media, and if there is such an analysis, I haven't seen yet, in how much was spent from the Democratic Alliance, and you all saw this in the run-up to the election, that their social media was extensive, and that's because they have the financial resources to do that. So a lot of the smaller, more progressive parties would probably not have that kind of funding to get their message out, to get their manifesto out to the broader South African public, and therefore could not necessarily garner the votes that they needed. So traditional parties like AZAPO or the PAC or so forth would not have the necessary funding to do that. And the reality is then that money does play a part in where and how people voted. And a huge investment was made to counter the African National Congress from particular sectors. And the reason was for this, they actually were hoping for better. They were hoping that they would be the majority and that the neoliberal right-wing political parties that support Israel and the Western hegemony would have been able to do a regime change through the elections, through the polls. That didn't happen, and now we are sitting with a possible government of national unity, with the ANC still as a majority, but not an outright majority.
No, I think we're going to leave it there. We have run out of time. Naazim Adam from the Palestine Solidarity Alliance, thank you so much for giving us your time and giving us insights on where the country currently finds itself, and also throwing forward to the future on what we can expect. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Alaikum salam. That was Nazim Adam of the Palestine Solidarity Alliance. Yeah, it's going to be really, really interesting times. We spoke to all three Palestine Solidarity organizations just to get their thoughts on what they think of a government of national unity and how ultimately it might affect how South Africa approaches Palestine and that very, very important case at the ICJ. It's going to be very, very interesting times, very interesting, concerning times ahead. But we'll be here on Salam Media giving you the latest on all the happenings surrounding that. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be having our Juma Nasiya. We call it Juma Inspirations. And this time we'll be joined by Maulana Muhammad Saliji. He's the Imam of Musalla Swalihin in Durban. He'll be giving us a Juma Nasiya right after this.